I know that like maybe it's a bruise to my ego that I need to start seeing more clients again, because I really prided myself on getting down to 4 clients a week as an owner, or only 12 clients a week as a solo practice owner. But also I'm seeing some of my clients are dropping off. So I'm going to like open up more spaces. That's fast money. The kind of like more slow money or working on the business for group practice owners specifically, I will say, I think is, and for solo practice, it's often about marketing.
You didn't start your practice to barely hang on. I'll guess you started it for freedom, impact, and profit. This is Therapy for Your Money. I'm your host, Julie Harris. I'm an accountant, author of Profit First for Therapists, and CEO of GreenOak Accounting. Over the years, my team and I have partnered with hundreds of private practice owners, whether they're just getting started, scaling into thriving groups, or even preparing to sell. We've seen it all, and we know exactly what makes a practice tick financially. On Therapy for Your Money, I'll help you build a business that truly works for you. You'll get quick, actionable tips and episodes so that you can grow a profitable practice, increase your financial confidence, and pay yourself unapologetically. Because your work is way too important for you to burn out or go broke doing it. Love the podcast? Make sure to follow and give us a 5-star review. Here is Therapy for Your Money. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Therapy for Your Money. Today is part 2 of my episodes with Linzy Bonham from Money Skills for Therapists. So last week we talked about in this economy, is how we unofficially named the episode. But we talked about kind of what's going on in the economy. Honestly, it was a little bit of a downer episode, but the economy is a little bit of a downer right now. Yeah, that's just how it is. But in this episode, we're going to be much more uplifting, or we're going to try at least, and we're going to talk about what you can do as a practice owner to course correct if things aren't going your way. What are some of the things that you can do? So, Linzy, do you want to add some context to that?
I do. Yeah, I do want to add context because I'm all about context. You know, something that occurs to me, and you and I have talked about this idea before, is culturally with therapy too, we're in a little bit of a pendulum swing in that the things that we've been talking about so much and that we've been concerned about the last 5 years mostly has been burnout, right?
Yes.
Like we've been talking about okay, again, you have all these folks beating down your door. If you say yes to everybody, you're going to be seeing 25 complex trauma clients a week. Don't do that. You're going to die. So, you know, how do we set the right boundaries? How do we take care of ourselves? Like, how do we space out our schedules? Like, we've had to think a lot about self-preservation in terms of not overworking, because that's kind of been the problem that we've had. We've had the problem where if you're not intentional, you're going to overwork and you are going to burn right out of the field. And that does happen to folks, right?
It does.
So that's kind of the conversations we've been having a lot over the last 5 years, because that's the problem that we've had. But our problem is starting to change. Now we have a new problem, which is, as we talked about last time, you know, folks, all of us, myself included, we're feeling a bit more cautious with our dollars. You know, we're thinking kind of twice before we make big investments.
Mm-hmm.
People who might have been really happy to spend $200, you know, a week on therapy a year ago, now are like, maybe I'll just leave that money in my household for now. Is that really worth it to me right now? So we are seeing this dampening on demand. And the way that that's showing up is we're seeing less waitlists for folks who used to always be waitlisted. We're seeing group practice owners having a harder time filling up their clinicians. You know, caseloads just not being full.
Just less calls altogether, right?
Less calls,
less outreach,
less demand. And of course, what that means for all of us is less money coming in the door.
Yeah.
So that's kind of our broader picture of where we are now. And I want to name that pendulum swing because I do think there is a change in conversation there, a change in focus then that has to happen, which is a little weird because we've been so used to being but don't burn out. Because again, that has been our biggest threat. But I'm going to say our biggest threat is starting to change. And it's important for us to stop and notice that, because otherwise we can spend all of our time still trying to kind of protect ourselves from this old problem when it's not actually the new problem. It's not the biggest challenge we have right now anymore.
So what would you call the new problem?
I'm going to say, the new problem is crickets, tumbleweed town. What do we call it?
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was thinking more of to me, the new problem is sometimes you just have to get to work.
That's the solution, Julie.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
So maybe the problem then is not being willing to do the things that need to get done at this point.
Right. So, and this is where our fear of burning out and our sometimes what has become maybe a bit of rigidity to protect ourselves. We're like,
Mm-hmm.
no, I do not work past 4 o'clock. I always pick my son up for the bus stop every day. I, always do yoga every Thursday morning. Like these things that we have put in place to make sure that we don't burn out. What I'm hearing from you is like part of the solution for some folks might be that we have to be more flexible,
Yes.
work a little more than we used to.
Yeah. And this came from a conversation that you and I had a couple weeks ago, Lindsay, right? Where I was telling you, where we're seeing group practice owners say, I worked so hard to get my caseload down to, 3 clients.
Mm-hmm.
Do I really need to start seeing clients again? And sometimes the answer is yes. If like you're down to almost $0, yeah, you probably do need to get back to seeing clients, even though I don't love that for you, right? I don't necessarily want that for you long term and permanently. But just because we got to this point doesn't mean that that's what works for the practice right now. Or we're having clients tell us like, oh, my clinical director can't possibly have a client load. Okay, but you're down to now 4 therapists. Your clinical director like probably shouldn't even be a clinical director. They need to see clients today, like this week.
Yes.
But we're seeing a lot of rigidity of I couldn't possibly ask them to do that. Like, okay, well, if you're not willing to do the things that need to be done, there are downhill repercussions to those decisions as well.
Yeah.
Right. So that's let's get to work. Let's do the hard things because there are sometimes some hard decisions that are not fun, but that are the job of the business owner.
Yeah, they are not fun. They are not fun at all. I'm sighing, thinking about some of my own decisions I've had to make over time where you're like, okay, wow, for the good of the business, I have to make this particular decision and I literally want to barf.
Yes.
But for the business to continue to exist and take care of all of us and take care of all of the folks that we serve, we have to make these hard calls sometimes. And partially what I'm hearing from you right now is like, it makes me think about kind of 2 different types of action that we can take as business owners. One is action that's going to get fast money in the door. And the other is kind of like investing in the business, taking strategic action that will give us like longer term money. So as a group practice owner, in this scenario, if you're seeing 3 clients a week and you're like, oh, I worked so hard to get here. Like, I don't want to go back. And again, this is where I think we're suggesting that maybe there's a bit of rigidity there. My son's occupational therapist would call that rock brain. You might be in rock brain.
Okay.
If I tell my son he's in rock brain, he loses his shit, by the way. He's not into it.
Okay.
Augie, are you in rock brain? He's like, I'm in rock brain. But this is where we could be super flex instead. Right. So it's like sometimes we do get into this mode of like, no, I can't possibly. I work so hard. That would be like a loss or a failure or moving backwards. But, what I'm thinking is, as the practice owner, if you have a great reputation in the community, and if there's folks who, come to the practice because they want to see you and they end up seeing somebody else instead, but they really want to see you, that's a fast way to get like a bunch of money in the door quickly if you are in demand and you have been turning away that demand. So I'm thinking like that's a way to get fast money. Yeah. And sometimes our businesses need fast money. Sometimes like we just need to get some money in the door right now to pay the bills that are coming, especially for a group practice. This is the most relevant, I think, to like pay your payroll. You seeing 5 clients a week in addition, at $200 each, let's say, that's an extra $4,000 a month coming into the practice that pays for all the things that are going to have to be paid for anyways. So that's kind of what I hear is partially it's doing the things that are going to get us those results that immediately start to create stability.
Yes. There's the working in the business and then working on the business, right? And sometimes it's like, oh, well, I'm used to having Fridays off and I'm not willing to give that up. And I'm not saying you should give up your Friday forever and ever, but maybe you do need to do some marketing activities for a couple of hours on a Friday, right? Or there's some kind of give. And maybe it's Saturday morning because your partner is home and they can manage the kids, right? And so they can have some great time together and you're doing something that's helpful for the business. That's the pendulum swing that I'm seeing, right? Where I'm hearing a lot of I can't, which to me really usually means I won't. I'm not willing to.
I don't want to.
I don't want to. And sometimes as the business owners, we're just the ones that have to do the hard thing. And it can be fun things. It can be new adventures, right? That's part of a business ownership that I actually really like is the figuring outing or the figure outing.
Yep.
Of like, what do we need next? What are we going to try? Right? A, B, C, D, E, who knows? And you just kind of test things out. I like that part. Do
Me too.
you? Do you like
Yes.
that? Okay.
Which is why we're still in business. Because yeah, if you can think about things as kind of a fun experiment
Yeah.
and be like, what if this, what if that?
Okay.
Like we're in the middle of a sales launch right now and it's like we've done something totally different. Might not look too different to our audience, but we know that like we're kind of like doing things in a different order than we usually do. And like, we've kind of like remixed things and we're seeing what's happening. Honestly, it's not going great. So we'll probably do something different next time. But when you have kind of the resilience to try things, to see how they go and take that as data, you can have fun with it. And also you can just make your business work because you start to really figure out what works for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, thinking about the Fridays, like I used to not work Fridays and now I do.
Okay.
That has changed in my own business. Again, just as like the market has changed, and we're having to maybe like think differently and try different things. I have more work to do. So I work on Fridays. And I have actually noticed for me right now, that actually feels totally fine because I'm like, just
Okay.
this is the season we're in, right?
Yeah.
Like I think if we can make peace with the season we're in, then we can embrace what we need to do. But yeah, so that's kind of like, because I'm thinking to the Fridays, this makes me think about the working on the business piece.
Yes.
Right? Because there's these actions that sometimes we have to take where we're just like, okay, I know that like maybe it's a bruise to my ego that I need to start seeing more clients again because I really prided myself on getting down to 4 clients a week as an owner or only 12 clients a week as a solo practice owner. But also I'm seeing some of my clients are dropping off. So I'm going to like open up more spaces. That's fast money. The kind of like more slow money or working on the business for group practice owners specifically, I will say, I think and for solo practice, it's often about marketing.
Yeah.
Just like we need to find new ways now to get found. And yeah, what are your thoughts on marketing with how things are changing and how much more just like price sensitive people are these days?
Yeah. So I'm generally, Lindsay, a big believer in hiring people who are experts in their own space. And that's the really interesting part, though, is when the market feels a little bit tighter, when everyone's just being a little tighter with their dollars, they're often not willing to do that. But I think that is often a mistake where the way I think of spending money or investing money in a program or in a professional is you're just shortening the length of time to execution, right? So instead of like, yeah, could I figure out how to ChatGPT employment contract? Not that I have employment contracts already, right? But I'm just as an example. Yeah, I probably could. And it might be somewhat good or not, depending on the input that I put in it. Or I could spend, a few $100s with my attorney and know with certainty that they are actually correct and legal in my state, right? So you're just shortening the amount of time where even with your ChatGPT thing, you're probably eventually going to need to go to an attorney and have to rewrite them and do it, right? You're just lengthening the time to do that. So the same right now applies to marketing, to hiring, to building a business. Facebook advice is worth what you pay for it, right? It is free. And sometimes it is lacking tremendously in context, especially for really complex pieces like accounting, which depends on your specific facts and circumstances and your state. Where do you have employees, right? It depends on a lot of very specific things. So people can give you lots of advice that is good for them on social media, and it is crappy for you. But by going to that free advice, you are just lengthening. Ultimately, you're going to end up at some point in the same position.
Yes.
It will just take a lot longer. So I'm a fan whenever possible, right? Whenever money will allow to shorten that timeline and just pay someone who's good at it to get you on the right track right now. But I think what I'm seeing specifically is the practice owners that are really successful in adapting, and again, solo to group, they are themselves adaptive. They're saying, this feels different and I'm not sure what's going on, but I'm going to go figure it out. So they're looking at the data, they're talking to people, they're trying different things. They're networking in the community. They're not just saying like, well, let me spend more money on the same ads that we've had for years and see if that works, right? They are adapting and iterating and course correcting. And that is what is causing them to still be successful in this economy. That's the traits that I am seeing. Yeah. What about you?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, the words that come to mind for me as well are like adaptive, resilient, right? So trying different things. And also, I just had a conversation last week with some of my therapists inside Money Skills Group practice owners about marketing. And yeah, just really being creative too.
Yeah.
But being creative, but then also being present enough to notice what works and what doesn't. right? So there's this mix of like creativity, trying stuff, but also being organized enough that you can actually see the results. Because when we're
Yeah.
just kind of like randomly like throwing things left, right, and center, sometimes it's hard to know what has actually worked and what hasn't. So this is where having some nice metrics that you're tracking. This is true for solo practice owners and group practice owners of like, okay, these are the marketing activities that I took last week. Here are the inquiries that came in. This is where the people who converted actually came from. Okay, interesting. That marketing dinner that I attended that I didn't really enjoy actually gave me, a couple leads. Okay. So I'm going to like go back to that group, or I'm going to thank those people. I'm going to deepen those relationships. I was suggesting, again, just something to try to one of my group practice owners the other day. She's built relationships with the doctor's office. She got a couple good referrals. Send them a box of treats that says thank you with your card
Yes.
next to it.
Yeah.
Like, be memorable, try stuff, right? Like what is the cost to your business of sending like a box of baked goods, like 45, 50 bucks? Put your business cards next to them. People come into the break room. They're like, oh, donuts. Cool. Who's this? Oh, this is from the psychologist,
Yeah.
down the road. Right. Oh yeah. And then you're top of mind, right? That's not just like to be clear, I'm not teaching marketing, but it's a fun idea and see what
Yes.
happens, right? Like that's a great example of something that doesn't cost a lot, but makes you stick out, because how many people do that? Right.
Well,
But it is
and
that being present and being curious and
yes.
willing to try different things.
I'm going to admit something that I don't think
Yeah.
I've ever said on the podcast, but I'm terrible at predicting which graphics will do well and will not, which creatives. So if we were not measuring those things, we would not know. What I think is going to do well almost never does. And it's always like the randomest things, like,
Yeah.
okay, but what are you going to do? And so, but if you're not looking, if you're not willing to say, you know what, I was wrong and we're going to pull it because it's not doing well,
Yes.
then
No, it's your baby and you love it.
yes.
Because there's that piece too, right? We get sometimes overly attached to things and we can't let them
Yes.
go. Yeah. Look at the data.
You hit the nail on the head. Yeah. The data will tell us though, what's going on, right? If you're looking at where the referrals are coming from, you will know. We're talking a lot about marketing, even though that's
We
really not
are.
the focus here.
It isn't the focus, but part of what I'm thinking is, again, so much about, I think the challenges these days are that folks are more price sensitive,
Yeah.
right? Like we're going to have to attract more people to get them in the door. We don't have a ton of time left to record, but I do want to throw out a question to you
Okay.
that came to me recently on a call. And I was like, that is a really interesting question. What do you think about out-of-pocket therapists in Canada, that's everybody, lowering their fees to meet where the market's at?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
What do you think about
I
that?
think that's that's an interesting one. I do think, I mean, there's kind of a high horse and then there's a practical approach as well, right? So I think it's not necessarily for everyone, but if I would go to the data, if you have seen a big drop off in clients and as you're reaching out to folks and say, hey, we noticed you didn't reschedule, right? We're sending them a short survey and they're saying the cost, I think it could be worth running an experiment and trying to see what is going on. Of course, if that makes sense for you and your practice, right? That probably means, all the other expenses have to be reviewed as well.
Yes.
But I think it's at least worth the experiment.
Yeah.
And then also in reality, right? We live out here in the real world, you and I. If you need money, right? If you're a solo therapist and you just simply need money to run your household, yeah, absolutely. Do what needs to be done. I would rather have some money coming in than $0. So in that sense, I would go back to an analogy you used for our last episode, which was the ship, right? If you have a large group practice, that's a big cruise ship. It's a lot harder to move and say, hey, we're going to do things differently. We're going to try this thing. But the smaller your practice, the more you can kind of adapt and zoom around and test things out. And I would definitely try. Yeah. What's your opinion?
Yeah. I mean, the answer that I gave to that therapist, because it was on like a coaching call, was run the numbers to see what the difference would actually be.
Yeah.
Like, let's say your standard fee is $175 and you want to bring it down to $150, which there might be something magic about that number. Like, numbers are not logical, right? Like, we all have very emotional relationships with numbers. So there are some numbers that it's easier for people to pay, right? You kind of like, there's these different like thresholds that become like, ooh, that's expensive. Like 180 wasn't expensive, but 200 is too much or whatever. So, but running the numbers of what the actual difference would be, like let's say people come for 3 more sessions because of that, right? Like what would be
Yeah.
the actual impact of clients being retained or converted compared to the money that you're losing? Because yeah, and this is where I think I bring this up not because I actually have the answer, but I do think it's a good example of a spot where we have learned to be a bit like sanctimonious, right? We're like, no, 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 no. I am a $300 an hour therapist. Like that's who I am. I've
Yep.
worked really hard on my mindset to get to this place. And if I go backwards, then I'm kind of like failing or I'm letting myself down. And I think that there's that take on it, but I do think that that's where we're maybe making it too personal. We're making it too
Yeah.
personal. And really, it's like we are in business. And part of business is like meeting the world where it's at and being able to like sell the right thing at the right time. And if it's really hard for you to sell a bunch of $300 sessions, but a whole bunch of people are happy to pay you 180, again, like some dollars is a lot more than no dollars.
Yeah.
So
Run the
it's
numbers.
just, yeah, again, run the numbers, see what makes sense. If you're small, you can experiment. If you're big, it's definitely harder. But yeah, I wanted to put that out there because I do think that, again, that's another area where so much we have kind of like dug in of like, no, no, my work is worth this much.
Yeah.
And it's like our work is only ever worth as much as people are willing to pay us.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah.
Same like houses, right? It's
Yeah,
worth what someone is willing to pay for.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's that. And it's not a reflection of your own self-worth as a person
No.
or as a therapist either. It's not personal.
Not
All
even
right.
close. Julie,
Lindsay, on that note, we've got to wrap it up.
We
Such a
do.
pleasure to do a 2-parter with you.
it was really fun. Can we just quickly summarize what we talked about today? Because I feel like there
Yeah.
were a lot of ideas.
Absolutely.
We talked about being adaptable
Yes.
and resilient. Those are my words. I just summarized my own points first, not surprisingly.
Course correct.
Course
If you need
corrected.
to, be willing
Yes.
to try a bunch of different things. I would approach it with curiosity and just try things out. See
Yeah.
what works
Be
for
creative
you.
and then
now.
measure what works.
Measure what
right?
works.
Like,
Yes.
measure
Look
what
at the
works.
data. Yeah. Amazing.
Everybody, you're all going to do great. We got this. We're all in the same suit.
Yes.
We're all figuring
You've
it out
got
together.
it.
Yeah.
And it's not easy being a business owner. If it was easy,
No.
everyone would do it, but you've got
That's true.
this. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank
All
you,
right.
Julie.
Bye, everyone.
Okay.
That's it for today's episode of Therapy for Your Money. Catch us on Instagram and Facebook at Therapy for Your Money Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe to GreenOak Accounting on YouTube. Until next time.
The information contained in this podcast represents the host and guest's general opinions and should not be construed as personalized accounting and tax advice. Listeners should consider all facts and circumstances before applying this information and seek appropriate advice from an accountant, financial planner, lawyer, or other professional. Any info provided does not constitute accounting, tax, or legal advice.